The ruling party in Senegal, under the leadership of President Faye, is heading into the November 17th elections with a strong footing. However, it faces a rejuvenated opposition that, despite only having 2 months to regroup, is determined to challenge the ruling coalition. These upcoming elections were called following the recent decision by President Faye to dissolve the National Assembly, an announcement that had been widely anticipated by political insiders and the public alike. With just 60 days until the elections, the race is on to reshape the political landscape of Senegal. President Faye's ascension to the presidency on March 24th was a significant moment for Senegal. Faye, the youngest head of state in the country's history, won the election on a platform of sweeping reforms. His campaign struck a chord with a population that had been weathering a prolonged political crisis and rising economic instability. The 3-year political turmoil had left many Senegalese frustrated as the government struggled to address the growing unemployment crisis, skyrocketing cost of living, and systemic governance issues. With the help of his running mate and now Prime Minister, Ousmane Sonko, Faye offered a vision of a radically different future for Senegal. Together, they ran on a ticket that promised social justice, national sovereignty, and a new wave of leftist Pan-Africanism. These ideas resonated deeply in a nation where young people make up the majority of the population, many of whom are dissatisfied with the status quo. One of the key messages of Faye's campaign was the promise of putting an end to economic and political practices that had for years hindered the country's progress. His call for sovereignty was not only about reducing reliance on foreign powers and international financial institutions, but also about reclaiming the nation's political direction from elites who, he argued, had become disconnected from the people. Despite the enthusiasm generated by Faye's victory, his administration has faced considerable roadblocks. The National Assembly, which was still dominated by former President Macky Sall's coalition, has made it difficult for Faye to push through his ambitious reform agenda. This has frustrated not only Faye's supporters, but also many ordinary Senegalese who had hoped for swift and meaningful changes. The inability to pass critical legislation has placed significant pressure on the government. Faced with this parliamentary impasse, Faye made the bold decision to dissolve the National Assembly. He announced that he would ask the people for a fresh mandate, one that would enable him to implement the transformations he had promised during his campaign. In his statement to the nation, President Faye underscored the importance of this moment. "I have dissolved the National Assembly to ask the sovereign people for the institutional means that would allow me to give substance to the systematic transformation that I have promised them," he said. "Now more than ever, the time has come to open up a new time frame for our 5-year term of office." For many political observers, this move was seen as both necessary and inevitable. The president's plans, which include radical economic reforms, justice system overhauls, and measures to tackle the high cost of living, have been consistently blocked by a parliament still loyal to the old regime. Dissolving the assembly, which had been in office for 2 years, and calling for early elections, was a strategic move to clear the way for more decisive government action. The decision to dissolve the assembly has been met with mixed reactions. On one hand, many citizens have expressed relief, agreeing that the old parliament was not aligned with the new direction that Faye and his government sought to take the country. "I think it's a wise decision," said one political analyst. "The dissolution of this assembly is perfectly normal, so I really agree with those who opted for the dissolution." Others echoed this sentiment, congratulating the president for making a decisive move. "We know that he has projects that must pass through the National Assembly, and if he doesn't have a majority, they won't pass," said one government supporter. "We can see that the MPs are not helping him to implement his plans. Given that this legislature has been in office for 2 years, he has the right to dissolve the assembly, and he has done so." On the other hand, supporters of former President Macky Sall have accused Faye of using this political maneuver to sidestep scrutiny and consolidate power. They argue that the dissolution of the assembly is a way to derail efforts to challenge Prime Minister Sonko's government and delay the presentation of their policy program. There are also concerns that this election may be an attempt to weaken the opposition's ability to mount a credible challenge, given the short time frame available for preparation. Organizing parliamentary elections in just 60 days poses a number of logistical and political challenges. One of the key concerns is whether there will be sufficient time to revise the electoral rolls and ensure that all eligible citizens are able to vote. There are also questions about whether the controversial candidate sponsorship system, which has been a point of contention in the past, will remain in place for these elections. Despite these challenges, the government appears determined to press forward. For Faye and Sonko, the stakes are high. Without a majority in parliament, their government will continue to struggle to implement its agenda. Winning control of the National Assembly would give them the mandate they need to carry out the reforms that have been central to their platform. At the same time, the opposition is also gearing up for a fight. Though they have only 2 months to regroup, they are hoping to capitalize on the dissatisfaction that still exists among some segments of the population. While Faye has garnered widespread support for his vision of a more just and equitable society, there are those who remain skeptical of his ability to deliver on his promises. Senegal's upcoming elections also take place against the backdrop of broader political dynamics in West Africa. Across the region, countries are grappling with similar issues of economic inequality, political instability, and a growing youth population that is demanding change. In many ways, the situation in Senegal mirrors developments in neighboring nations, where young leaders have risen to power on promises of reform, only to face entrenched political establishments resistant to change. Moreover, West Africa has seen a resurgence of Pan-Africanist sentiments in recent years, with leaders like Faye championing a vision of regional cooperation and independence from former colonial powers. This has resonated with many across the continent, especially in the wake of increasing economic pressures and the ongoing challenges posed by globalization. However, the road ahead for Senegal's new leadership remains uncertain. The government has taken important steps, such as launching audits into the management of public funds, initiating a justice reform project, and lowering the prices of essential household goods like rice, sugar, and oil. Yet major action plans, such as job creation initiatives and broader economic reforms, have yet to materialize. As the November 17th elections approach, both the ruling party and the opposition are gearing up for what promises to be a closely watched and potentially transformative election. For Faye and his government, winning a majority in the National Assembly will be crucial to advancing their agenda and fulfilling the promises made during the campaign. For the opposition, the challenge will be to mobilize quickly and present a viable alternative that can resonate with a population eager for change. Whatever the outcome, the elections will mark a pivotal moment in Senegal's political history. With the majority of the population under the age of 35 and grappling with economic hardships, the results will likely reflect the desires and frustrations of a new generation of voters. For many, this election represents not just a political contest, but a referendum on the future direction of the country. As Faye himself has stated, the next few months will be critical in determining whether his administration can deliver on its promises. With the dissolution of the National Assembly, the path has been cleared for a new chapter in Senegal's political journey. All eyes are now on the November elections, as the nation prepares to head back to the polls in what could be one of the most consequential votes in its history.